This video will be covering an introduction into posture. So to begin our discussion of posture, we need to first talk about what is a correct posture or what is a faulty posture. It's always kind of interesting when we have a class or when you have a lesson on posture. During that class, most people tend to sit up a little straighter. They tend to become a little bit more aware of their posture during the time in which they are going through that discussion. So it's pretty interesting. I think most of us can identify a correct posture, and we kind of know what it is. It's something that's been talked about, right, since we were little kids. Sit up straight, you know what I mean? Those types of things. But I think what happens is most of us just don't have the habits ingrained in us to always maintain this correct posture. Therefore, we tend to fall into a faulty posture fairly frequently. And so it's always kind of interesting. So with that in mind, a correct posture, a textbook definition, is going to be any posture in which minimum stress is applied to the joints. So for humans, that's going to be most of the time where it's upright. So if we look at this skeleton here where someone's sitting in a chair, right? This is a classic position where because we're on our computers so much, where we see in this individual this humped over spine, right? So we see some a nice kyphotic curve here in the thoracic spine, and then we're going to have this extended head position. So I think most of us would be able to look at this skeleton and say, yeah, I think that's probably not a correct posture. And I think that by now, hopefully we realize that what's actually happening is with this person having their head out, right, they're not upright, and so they're creating excess weight. They're creating some levers and some torque, which is causing some excess stress, especially here in the cervical spine. The suboccipital muscles in this posture are working incredibly hard. Tension in this back is likely to develop because these muscles here on the posterior spine are going to be constantly in a constant state of contraction. So I think most of us can look at this skeleton and be like, I don't think that's correct for these reasons. And now with the textbook definition, we just know that excess stress is being put on these joints here in the spine because of this posture. So in order to achieve a correct posture, this person would just have to sit up, have their arms out in front of them very nice, right? And that would achieve minimal stress applied at the joints. So with this definition in mind then, a faulty posture is going to be any position that increases stress at the joints. So if it causes excess stress at the joints. So with that in mind, I just wanted to make a small note. An ideal posture or a correct posture may differ from person to person because of people's flexibility, because of their spinal alignment, because of their joint mobility. So just realize, some people are really flexible. Some people have these joints that are really, really nice and flexible or really tight. So we're going to have ideal postures vary from person to person a little bit. But in general, for us, our correct ideal posture is going to be in this upright position, whether sitting or standing or kneeling or what have you. But upright for us is going to create minimal stress at the joints. So faulty posture can occur. Faulty posture can occur when joints are hypomobile, so if something's too tight, if something's too loose and they're hypermobile. A lot of times we're going to talk a lot about muscles here during this unit. If muscles are weak, they tend to be lengthened, right? And you can imagine how if a muscle is really weak, but on the opposite side, the muscles are really tight and short, you're going to create some concavities and some convexities in the bodies, which are going to affect someone's posture. And we'll talk about that a little more as this unit goes on here. So one thing that we can mention here before we move into some other things, just realize that as with most things in the body, before severe problems develop is the best time to adjust, right? So when we're young, when we're healthy, when we don't have a lifetime of faulty postures, that's usually the best time to develop a correct posture. Just realize if someone is in a faulty posture over and over and over again, day after day after day, they can actually develop stresses on their body which result in chronic malformations or bad posture. For example, in the spine unit, we talked a little bit about that Dowager's hump in those female women. I know it's very common to see that. I know people in my own family that have that dowager's hump, and a lot of times that can be thought of as from an incorrect faulty posture where someone's kind of curved, and it's something that's repeated over and over, and a dowager's hump can develop over time. So that's one thought. So these chronic stresses can result in the same problems as an acute severe stress, right? If it happens day after day, over and over and over. So there's lots of things that can develop a faulty posture. We already mentioned about the joints and about the muscles, right? So poor body mechanics. This is getting at those, someone sitting at a computer day after day. They're constantly slumped over. Their head's constantly out in front in an extended position. So poor body mechanics can develop into faulty posture. It's not simply just a faulty posture, but it can develop into a chronic, all the time faulty posture. Definitely heredity, right? Someone born with scoliosis or any number of vertebral problems can definitely contribute to a faulty posture. Some environmental factors. You guys might have seen pictures of those kids that develop rickets, where they can't get enough vitamin D, or other types of nutritional or habitual postures here. But anyway, these can develop into faulty postures, a genu valgum, a genu varum, a genu recurvatum. Maybe the bones don't have time to develop up top in the shoulders, so you develop some malalignment. So there can definitely be lots of environmental factors which contribute to a faulty posture. We already talked about scoliosis, right? Talipes equinovarus, some of those things. Let's keep going here. This is a big one here. We know that psychologically, how you're feeling can definitely impact your posture, right? If we're feeling down, if we're feeling depressed or sad, we tend to curl up. We tend to get really small. If we're feeling powerful and if we're feeling strong and in control, we tend to spread out. We develop this wide posture, and there's some cool videos and some cool research being done on that, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about some of those power postures and how it can help affect us. So just realize that our psychological health and our factors can definitely impact how we hold ourselves. Growth rate, definitely, you might develop asymmetry in the body if someone's developing more on one side than the other. That can definitely happen. And then, of course, pain. If someone has pain and they can achieve a position which puts them out of pain, people tend to find that position and hold it. Again, if it's a chronic pain and it's something that's happening day after day after day, and they're constantly finding a position of comfort, they're obviously going to develop some habitual faulty postures. And then I think we're good on here. Various diseases, physical condition. So now we know a little bit about these faulty postures, what causes them. So what happens? What's the downside of these faulty postures? So when we have a faulty posture which is creating excessive stress at the joints, then what can happen is we can end up developing some abnormalities and some problems which contribute to diseases or pathology or things that we just don't really want, in our lives. So the abnormal stresses can cause excessive wear of articular surfaces. A good example of that is here in the knee. You can see in this knee, if someone has a genu varum, right, and they're always bow-legged and they have these wide knees, they tend to put a lot of stress on this medial femoral condyle and this medial tibial plateau. And if that's the case, over time, you can see a nice picture of it here. People are going to develop osteoarthritis. They're going to wear down the meniscus on that side. They're going to wear down the articular cartilage. And it's going to contribute to pain, loss of function, loss of quality of life, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's not a positive thing in our life. You can see here, this is a knee replacement, a total knee replacement. This knee has not been done yet, but you can see that this knee is probably a candidate for this total knee replacement, likely as a result of a genu varum, right? Osteophytes can be secondary to these stresses, right? Those bone spurs, these traction spurs. You can see those there. We talked a little bit about some of that in the spine at the facet joints, also on the vertebral bodies that can definitely happen. So when we have these faulty postures over time, repeatedly, right, it can contribute to things that we don't necessarily desire to have in our lives. Another thought or comment on this, not necessarily just at the bones, right, but our muscles, our ligaments may become weak. You might become more prone to dislocations. You might become prone to breathing problems if you're constantly caving in your chest, right? So it just can contribute all sorts of types of problems. So we're going to look at posture mostly in a static position here in this class. But hopefully you saw in GATE, right, we've developed all these norms, and you can definitely examine posture dynamically as someone moves, as they run, as they walk, as they go through a sporting activity, or they go through their daily life. You can definitely look at this posture in dynamic as well as static environments. I'm going to keep going here. So just I wanted to throw these in again. I mentioned these in the spine videos. Just remember the development of postural deformities. So a first degree is going to be something that's curable by exercise. Our second degree is improvable by exercise, but not curable, right? So hopefully you can see that subtle difference. It's not something that can just go away with exercise, but we can definitely impact it. And then our third degree is going to be unaltered by exercise. So that doesn't necessarily mean that their quality of life cannot be improved because of exercise, but simply that their faulty posture, for example, if they are really humped over, they have started to develop an ankylosing spondylitis. That's not something that's going to be altered by exercise, but exercise could improve their life. So again, hopefully you can see those slight differences. So just remember, as we go through this posture, through these faulty postures, we have this first degree, second, and third degree, again, curable by exercise, improved by exercise, or unaltered by exercise. Final couple things for this video. So hopefully we realize now in the spine we have these kyphotic and these lordotic curves. So in this baby, the thing that I want you to glean from these next couple slides, when we are babies, we have a simple kyphotic spine. And you'll notice that if you watch kids, they love to be in this curved position. A lot of times when you hold a baby, right, they love to be in that curved position. It's where they find comfort. Over time and throughout life, we develop what's called our secondary curves, or these lordotic curves, that you can see here, which develop as we become upright. So in our cervical spine, we're going to have the lordosis along with the lumbar spine. Those are going to develop over time as we become upright. Our thoracic spine and our sacrum always hold these kyphotic curves even after we are upright. And you can see here the primary curves are present from birth. The secondary curves are formed during development as we become upright. So this is some of those pictures of those babies. You can see this is the development of those lordotic curves. That's why they have babies do a lot of that tummy time, so that as they become upright, the secondary curves are beginning to form in a person's life. And that finishes this video on the basic introduction to posture.